Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from Scupper Lake. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. We've got a packed episode today. We've got the Spanish Grand Prix recap. We've got the Monaco Grand Prix preview. We've got League of Legends MSI Rumble Stage. Some Kendrick Lamar album kind of review and conversation, and of course Magic the Gathering. We've got it all today, so we're looking forward to it. Justin, good to see you.
Good to see you too, my friend. I'm going to be like a kid without his homework tonight because the race was on Sunday. We're recording a day late, and hopefully my points don't come across like mushy bread.
No, I think we'll be able to really dig into everything. And to start digging in, do you want to get started with your Rose, Thorn, and Seed for this week?
Yeah, sure. I would love to kick it off here. So I'll start with my seed here this week. It's something I talked about previously, where me and Sarah had opened up an ad campaign with a local magazine. So that went to print, I guess, very recently. So the magazine is in homes, and we've been getting a bunch of people reaching out saying like, "Oh my God, I see you guys in the magazine," and like grabbing the coupons and really going for it. So it's clear that the magazine really has a reach and impact. So we're very pleased to see that investment just like turning right around. So that's very cool to see.
Nice. And that's that makes sense, I think, just in terms of your like marketing and brand. You are a local business, so just getting your name out to the local community and everything, like for whatever, whoever's clipping coupons or just like browsing through those magazines, I think that's a great way, because people are not always going to know like something like that's in the area and everything, and having it there in front of them, I think just it makes you guys so much more accessible to just get your name out. So that's dope that you're getting some phone calls and hearing that people have checked out the magazine.
Yeah, it's super cool, and I know there was an element when I left my previous position. I know there was an element for some clients where they were like, "Oh, I just didn't know where you went. I didn't know how to get a hold of you." So I have a feeling I may be seeing some faces and some names that I wouldn't have otherwise, with them just like, "Oh my God, there he is." So I think that's going to be pretty funny to see. But my thorn here for the week is less of a thorn and more of just a genuinely great idea that I'd come across on my list of things to do today. This fit the bill as my learn something, and I was listening to the F1 podcast Beyond the Grid. They were talking to McLaren Chief Technical Director James Key, I believe his name is.
That sounds right.
It's a great conversation. But one of the questions I was asked was like, what did you notice being a part of a bunch of different teams and a bunch of different, like having like different team bosses and such? And to succinctly put the idea across, he said there were some bosses that would come through and say, "Why isn't this car working well?" And then there were others that would come through and say, "How can I help make this car work better?" And just like that very, very stark difference in approach you could see engender different cultures within the team. And just from the perspective of a thorn, I thought that was interesting, where there's some individuals that want to be a part of the problem solving process and actually help remove the thorns, obviously. So, in just thinking about thorns and the things that bother us, that was a great idea that I heard today. That was like, oh man, there is, like, from a leadership position, ways to even help take thorns away from the people that you're responsible for, the people that are on your team. So I just thought that was a great idea in that podcast I was listening to.
Yeah, I think that's like a good role as a leader. I've seen just in my work experience, I've seen a number of different types of leaders, of managers and whatnot, and the managers that always are one the most endeared to their employees and like have the tightest knit kind of staff and groups and all are the ones who involve themselves with everything. They're not looking for reports on, oh, how are things going. They're like getting into it. They're working with their team and they're saying, how can I support you to do your job better? So like I don't imagine that Zach Brown is getting in there and being like, oh, give me a wrench. Let me like tighten that bolt. But he's probably like, okay, like what areas are we not reaching our expectations or our potential? And like, what can I do to get us closer to that ceiling? How can, like, do I need to bring in a new person? Do I need to like rework these groups? Do I need to like whatever? And I think that just in general, that's a great way to, like you said, engender a kind of good culture on the team. So
Yeah, and a push forward work ethic. It seems. So I just really like that little tidbit. And then my rows here for today. I have successfully cleared out my singles binder. So I only have a binder that's like, I call it like the showcase binder that has like mythics, legendaries that can be commanders, and cards that are like, the borderless treatment or, like the alternate art or whatever it is. So I just have one binder of that, a couple pages of lands, and a foil binder and some tokens, and that's it. Everything else is in sleeves, in decks, accounted for, and it really feels like a kind of a weight is off my shoulders, a weight is off my mind. Not that like my collection was weighing me down, but I know we were talking previously where we are or I'm kind of shifting some financial priorities and this and that. So it feels good to say like there's nothing that I'm going to be brewing with. There's like even no remote chance of like, oh, well, if I just get these couple of cards and I can do this, because like every time I just get 4 or 5 new cards, there's just like a watershed of brewing that happens where it's like, well, if that card's out of that deck, then I can put it into this deck. What card has to come out of that deck? And then it just like trickles all the way down, right? Yeah. So there's no more trickling that can happen until, I get a solid enough idea to be like, you know what, that deck is worth building. And then I can, go as full steam ahead as I want, or whatever it is. But it's just fun to have a cleared out binder. The cards will be able to go to a good home and whatever. That'll be fun. So that's my rose. Let me hear from you, sir.
Yeah. So for my rose for this past week, I had a pretty good weekend overall. We spent some time on Saturday at Colleen's brother and sister-in-law's house with their pool. So I finished up work on that sweltering 95-degree Saturday and then went over and got to jump in a pool and have a nice time with them and Colleen's 2 nieces and everything. So I'm looking forward to having some good pool time this summer and all. And then on Sunday, I went down to visit my family, and we spent some of the day doing some yard work and landscaping and mulching and stuff as a belated present for Mother's Day for my mom. Nice. So we got their house looking nice and spiffy, knocked out a bunch of that work. So that was solid. For my thorn, this week has been a bit tough, I guess, on me a little mentally. I've felt a bit overwhelmed and kind of starting to get towards a little bit of burnout and whatnot at work. And I mean, that's something that getting some like vacation, a little like relaxing and everything will hopefully kind of work with. Some other family stuff that I can't really get into at the moment. And then we had our basketball game on Tuesday, and the team we played was just to put it plainly, like the majority of them were just a bunch of assholes. Like players,
damn.
like one of my teammates got hurt on a play, and they had a guy who was like their coach, and he was like laughing about it on the bench. Like the one guy was like just like saying some mean shit to like people on our team, like whether it was that this kid who's on our team who was a free agent and just got put on our team, who he's clearly played basketball before, but he doesn't have a lot of confidence. He doesn't quite have all the pieces together and everything, and they're like saying how it's a mismatch and just trash talking the whole game. And I'm like, I'm here to play basketball, and that kind of thing, like along with all this other mental stuff that I had in my head, was just like, I was checked out at the end of the game. I like went to the bench. I sat the last like 7-8 minutes of the game. I had no interest of going back in because I was at a point where I was just fed up with like the way that they were acting and all. And I was like, if I go out there and like they do some dumb shit and keep acting like assholes, I'm gonna do something stupid or say something stupid. And I was like, it's just not worth it. And like, I usually don't get to that level, but I think all this stuff building up on me just kind of got me there. And I was glad at least that I recognized it and like know myself well enough to kind of just be like, nope, like I'm done. This isn't basketball anymore. This is people just being assholes and like trying to start shit, and I'm not about it. So that was my thorn. It's but hopefully I had therapy on Monday. I like talked to my therapist about some of the stuff that is going on and all, and I'm aware of it and like kind of have like done some thought work on it and reframing some things and just kind of working on it. So I'm not where I want to be quite yet with everything, but it's hopefully we'll get there before too long. So
Well, I mean, that sounds like a big step to me where you're just like actively removing yourself from the scenario, still being like there with and for your team, but just saying like, nope, I'm not about to bite somebody's head off, not worth it. I think that's huge and definitely not what an Aaron that I used to know would have done. So that's like,
yeah,
I'm proud of you, dude. That's sweet.
appreciate it. It's not the easiest thing for me when I get to that point, and so I just have to like I feel like I'm a lot more aware of my like emotions and those kinds of things now, so than I used to be. I continue to grow, and so good things overall. But then my seed for this week is just that hopefully to help out with kind of this burnout and all, we're like pretty much settled now into our place. We have a couple final things that we're going to get together to organize us a little bit more. And then really it's just getting to enjoy the space, kind of get into the summer and the fun stuff that is planned and everything. And so I will have some nice time to just relax and hopefully be able to have those that balance between the stressful work stuff and whatnot and just like relaxing and having a nice summer. So that is my rose, thorn, and seed for this week.
Very cool. Very cool. Speaking of being able to hop into hot pool or cool pools on hot days, the Spanish Grand Prix this past weekend was quite a boiler, a swelter.
Yeah.
A cooker.
It was, I think the tires were melting like ice cream cones out there on the cars. It was hot in Spain, in Barcelona. So
Yeah. Nice.
So, but of course, we started off this past week before the race, getting the look at the new Aston Martin car that they brought, the green Red Bull, and all the conversation surrounding that, which didn't end up turning into much. Both of the Aston Martins out in Q1 after bringing a very similar car to what Red Bull has, that apparently has been in the works as a secondary car since back in November. There's a lot of conversation about team members that left Red Bull who went to work for Aston Martin, and potential concerns of theft of what is that called? Intellectual data or intellectual information. But it seems as though they were cleared. But I did enjoy little bits of banter. Red Bull having the Red Bull green editions on the pit wall during the practice sessions and all, instead of their regular just Red Bull and sugar-free Red Bull. I thought that was a pretty. Whoever thought of that should get like bonus, like buy him dinner, give him a bonus. Like that is great marketing, and caught a lot of people's attention. So
Yeah, I'm curious if that was a team or one guy, but you have to imagine they have like a PR, a social media team that's like, oh, this is going to be a great like photo for Twitter or whatever it is. So yeah, that's pretty funny. But on a more like technical note, there are significant investigations that are done into those scenarios where it's basically like a math teacher checking homework, where they go to the factory, they go to the engineers, they go to the directors, and the guys like on the drawing room floor, and they say, how did you come to these findings? Like basically show us the data, show us the work that makes you believe that this is like the right package. And they basically try and reconcile the design with the blueprint and the math involved, and say like, okay, they came to this from their own volition.
Time frames and like all of that. It looks so similar, but it's impressive that they came up with a kind of similar idea. So
yeah, and you have to figure, like, yes, it seems like there is a lot of wiggle room within the regulations and the rules that are set forth by the governing body, but also having said that, do you think we're really going to see 10 exclusively different vehicles?
No.
Especially over the course of a 22 race season, where there's going to be dev upgrades, there's going to be all sorts of like aero package, all sorts of sticky uppy bits like they like to call them. So a certain point there's going to be some similar iteration, and and you know, I think the teams have to kind of be protected against the inevitability of the fastest thing.
Well, but also at the same time, I think that the reason that it drew so much concern and attention was that it is it's a completely different car than what they brought for the first 5 races of the season.
Sure.
So it is very, very rare for a team to make that drastic of a change. I mean, there are teams that, like McLaren, brought a ridiculous amount of new parts, new upgrades, things like that, a new floor, this and that, like new wing, sticky uppy bits, like all of that stuff. But theirs still was directed at the same general package that they brought the first 5 races.
Sure.
This Aston Martin, like being a complete new car, I think the concern is like most teams are not starting out and having 2 fully prepared cars like ready to, that are very different strategies or styles of aero and everything during one season, especially not like this early. I think and with some Red Bull staff leaving Red Bull and joining the Aston Martin team, I think that all of those things were like, this might be a red flag. Take a look at it. And I mean, overall, Aston Martin didn't end up doing anything wrong as far as we can tell so far. So like props to them for being able to do that. It does concern me in a sense of the potential cost of the design and everything. I mean, we've had Christian Horner come out this week and voice some concerns that he thinks with the inflationary costs of different parts and different things like that are kind of skyrocketing currently in just the world in general. That there are teams that may not be able to make it to the grid for some of the last races of the season because they are going to run out of budget cap. So designing two fully different cars on Aston Martin's side, I feel like that's a potential big hit to the budget.
Yeah, it would be a big hit to the budget, but I'm curious what makes him think that they wouldn't be able to put a car on the grid. Yeah, it may not be like optimal for that race, but you can still drive the car.
Well, if your car ends up getting damaged or whatnot, and you don't have any sort of budget later in the season to replace the parts and all, I think that's more the concern, because it is relatively common for these cars to take it. Like it would be surprising for any driver's car to make it the entire season without some serious repairs and whatnot. I'd say everyone takes at least one crash a season. So
yeah, no, that's a definite good point. I wasn't thinking about it from that angle.
Yeah, so I think that's the kind of concern there, but I guess we'll have to wait and see as we get more into the season and getting into the season a bit more. Of course, we had the Spanish Grand Prix qualifying. We had Leclerc coming out, getting pole, looking really, really quick, quarter of a second up on Max in P2, and then who was only, let's say, like 9/10 of a second up on Carlos Sainz. We see the Mercedes cars getting really into the mix, with George getting ahead of Sergio for that P4 position out of qualifying. Lewis there in P6. It's going to be interesting going forward. I mean, we have these Mercedes cars who are now they've figured out their porpoising a bit more. They've brought some upgrades and everything. And although they're still behind the eight ball a little bit and playing catch up, like that was a big step this week for their team.
Yeah, big time. And even we saw in practice, I forget if it must have been P2, or FP2, I should say, where they were like comparing the speeds, the straight line speeds of the top like 5 cars or whatever, and Russell and Lewis were at the top of those tables with the fastest straight line speed in the Mercedes. So I thought that was rather interesting, coming from races where we were left wanting from the Mercedes, and here they were like having great pace. And yeah, like you said, the bouncing issue on the rear end has been easing for them as well. They're able to find more pace. So yeah, like you were saying, I think good things to come here from the Mercedes team.
Yeah, and like you had said in FP 2 and 3, I mean, they finished FP2 in second and third overall. In FP3, they were in third and fourth, ahead of both Carlos Sainz and Checo. So some really big improvements from them as a whole. I was really impressed. Thought they did an awesome job kind of bringing it back. We also saw Danny Ricciardo get a nice little improvement from his recent woes and jumping up into P9, making it to Q3. We saw both Haas cars who brought 0 upgrades to this race compared to a lot of other teams coming in, getting both K-Mags and Mick into Q3 as well, starting in P8 and 10. So some exciting stuff kind of all around the grid.
Yeah, for the Haas not able to pull it through on race day, but yeah, definite pace in qualifying, which is super exciting.
Yeah, well, and kind of getting into the race a bit, I think the main reason that, of course, we had issues from Magnussen was his contact that he had with Lewis right at the start of the
Hmm.
race. All right, sorry about that brief cut, everyone. But I was talking about the race and Magnussen hitting Lewis right at the start,
Hmm.
kind
Yes.
of causing the Haas issues. Mick didn't have too bad a race, but I think that in general the strategy was tough to figure out because of the heat and everything. But yeah, that contact that Magnussen had with Lewis at the beginning, putting them both down at the bottom of the grid, just really made it tough. So even though they had that great qualifying performance, being able to climb back and make up that ground just didn't end up happening this week for the Haas cars, unfortunately. So
Yeah, and from the side of Pirelli, Mario Isola was talking that he was surprised that it was a three stop. Everybody was predicting a two stop, but it ended up being, well, for Max anyway, getting the three stop. And I believe a couple other cars did the three stop strategy as well.
yeah, and so we had a number of cars on the three stop. We had really almost everyone. We had
Okay.
Max, Sainz, Albon did four, Gasly, Stroll, Hamilton, Ricardo, Russell, Latifi, Norris, Ocon, Sonoda, Perez, and Alonso all doing a three
Gotcha.
stop. So
Okay.
really like and the thing that I thought was the most odd about that and everything was just the fact that no one used the hard tires at all. Like that was what was weird to me was that in all this heat and everything that no one went for that hard, like more durable, like higher heat resistant tire. Everyone went for the softs and the mediums. We really didn't see, I don't think anyone used the hard tires during the race, which is what surprised me when that was turning from that like two stop into a three stop.
Yeah, there might be a trade-off that they have to consider between the time lost in the pit stop and the average
Like
lap
yeah.
delta that you would incur every lap by being on the hard tires. Then there's also like the performance concerns is I'm not sure from a driver's perspective if that hard compound tire is where you want to be during those high temp races. and
Yeah.
and this is me just like posing the question. I don't know, but maybe there's something to be said about the pit time lost isn't as bad as what the delta would be. So just run on mediums two times in a row, plan for softs later,
And you make up
and
more time than you would save
right,
by one stopping on a
right.
yeah. Like I think that's probably what ended up being the case. I'm just surprised that no one tried it in the race. Like I guess they must have figured that out enough during the practice sessions and all.
Mhm.
But I when I saw how quickly everyone started pitting and people were starting to pit, I think around lap 8 or 9 was some of the earliest we had. Yeah, so lap 10 we saw Sainz, Alonso, Gasly, and Zhou come in, and so with a long race like we had, I really did not expect people to be coming in that early on. So seeing that I think is what caused me to be surprised that there was no hard tire use during the race, but it must have been something that they had kind of figured out throughout the practice sessions and kind of leading in. So
Sure. Yeah. No, that's an interesting point. And thinking back to the practice sessions, yeah, I really don't remember seeing too many people running on the hards. So it may not even be an option that they were really looking into. But yeah, speaking of tires, there's something about that. What was it? Turn four
Yeah.
where
So
Carlos and Max went off.
yeah, and so that was, I think, a little less tires. It seemed like that there was a that turn had a lot of wind coming from the back of the cars and gusty wind. So it seems like the two of them, from what I was hearing on the broadcast and just like looking at afterwards, was that they must have just gotten hit by an extra strong kind of gust of wind that caught them off guard and caused them to come into the turn faster than expected, not really hit the braking zones like they intended and everything.
Oh wow. So
So
less of a grip issue, more of a gust issue.
yeah, so apparently some strong tailwinds. That's the word I was looking
Okay.
for coming into turn four. And so that wind, though, I think caused a number of kind of issues throughout the race, both obviously with Carlos and Max going off. But I have a feeling that part of the DRS issues that Max was having was also exacerbated, at least by the wind, because when Max was hitting those DRS zones, I mean, it was still clearly an issue, but when he was hitting it on the short DRS zone that had the tailwind, it was opening up more frequently than it was on the main straight where you have the headwind coming at you. And I think that stronger headwind maybe was causing it more difficulty to open and lift up into that. Either way, that's a huge issue to just be having throughout the race. And obviously Max was getting pretty frustrated with that situation, especially being stuck behind George, who he did have more pace then, but George was putting his car in phenomenal positions. He was defending really well. He had good pace himself and was able to use it just enough to stay out ahead of Max while Max had the DRS struggles. So.
Well, it's kind of funny. This is like a very get good kid moment for Max, where he literally goes a full race without DRS, wins that race, and he gets to look behind at everybody else like what the fuck is your guys' problem? Like, I didn't even have the boost button and I beat this guy.
Yeah, I mean, it was impressive, but at the same time, we do also have to mention the fact that Leclerc was out there cruising in first place until he
was
lost power.
gone.
He was.
Yeah, it wasn't even a race for first. It was a race for 2 and 3 until.
And I mean,
out.
the craziest thing, it could have been a race for first before he was out, but George just kept holding Max back further and further, and you're just seeing this gap open up further and further for Leclerc as Max was struggling to get past George. But then just talking about the Mercedes cars in general, George had a phenomenal race. We see him come through and end up finishing there in P3. He has now finished top 5 in every race this season. Talking about the other Mercedes car, which we alluded to earlier, I as the big, giant Lewis Hamilton fan that the podcast knows I am, I did go and vote for him for Driver of the Day on the F1 website during the race, because watching him come back from P19, getting knocked out on turn 1, talking about saving the power unit and retiring the car, to come all the way back up, get to P4, and then end up having to give the position back and going back to P5 for the race finish was just an unbelievable drive. And I think that his contact with Magnussen, I think it was a racing incident. It looked like Lewis's car had a little bit of understeer and kind of slid out further than expected. I think Magnussen probably was trying to be a little too tight while going around on the outside. I think it was just a combination of those that put him in that position in the first place. But just an insane drive from Lewis to recover and just continue to kind of climb back through the field throughout the race.
Yeah, I think he might have had my driver of the day vote as well, had it not been for the blaming the team and saying, if you guys want to retire the car, you know.
Yeah, well, I think it was more of a he just like had given up hope at that point. It was like, if I can save the power, like, and I mean that's very unlike Lewis. I think because we've seen that, but yeah, impressive drive nonetheless. Even
he
even
definitely put his head down and got it done.
Yeah, after being pretty pessimistic, his team kind of was like, I think we could finish like in the points, maybe even better than P8, and he was like, all right, if you guys say so, and just kind of went with it. But that's why it's a team. Like, it's a team sport. Like,
sure,
if it had been up to Lewis in that moment, he would have probably just driven back to the pit lane and taken it in and all. But the team had the data. They felt more prepared and had a solution. So
yeah, big time. The driver that would have gotten my driver of the day vote was Esteban Ocon, going from, I think it was P12 in qualifying and made it up like 6 or 5 positions up to P7. So I thought that was really impressive. I think both him and Alonso are pretty dangerous on the grid. They're consistently seeming to get really good results out of their car and just in general. So yeah, I think Esteban had a great drive, and obviously it's never the racer that's going to get the camera time or the focus or whatever. But just looking at the finishes and the qualifying spot, I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, absolutely. He and Fernando both did an awesome job. I mean, Fernando was starting down in P20 after he took I think he took a engine penalty or something that put him at the back of the grid to start, because he qualified P17 and started P20 and was able to make it all the way back up into he finished P13. So going from 20th to 13th is still quite the improvement throughout the race and everything as well. So
yeah, and it's indicative of a car that can like climb.
Oh, actually, sorry, I apologize. I looked at the wrong thing. So he made it up to P9 after starting down in P20. So
gotcha. I just ran with it.
I had pulled up.
I thought you knew something I didn't.
No, I had pulled up the Monaco last year results, and I clicked on the wrong tab when I was flipping back and forth. So
gotcha. Okay, fair enough. But yeah, P9 for Alonso.
So yeah, P9. So the Alpine's getting some solid points. Valtteri Bottas again up there, P6, just right behind. That's my boy. Right behind the Ferraris and the Red Bulls and the Mercedes. Like, he's just right there. So huge props to them. He's scored points in every race that his car has made it to the end of this season with the Alpha. So really awesome job from him. But the one big conversation that we haven't had that I wanted to talk through with you and get your thoughts on. What is your opinion on the Checo Max situation? Having team orders.
What, driver's orders or team orders or whatever?
Team orders. It's only 6 races into the season. There was obviously a lot of frustration from Checo. Checo had let Max through earlier in the race, was hoping to have Max let him back through and take a shot at George when Max's DRS was not working. Kind of with the expectation that he would be able to quickly get by and kind of excuse me, make a run at Leclerc out in front.
I don't know. I don't know that there would have been enough time left for Checo's attempt had the race gone differently. So it seems like that's a scenario where the pit wall has way more data about the race at large than the driver does in the cockpit. I don't know.
Because I think at the time, Checo definitely had better pace than Max and better pace than George. And the only reason that he ended up making it through when he was the faster car, he was gaining on them like lap after lap, was because George and Max both pitted on the same lap.
Right.
So it was... I thought it was weird that they didn't let Checo through. I do at that point. I do understand though that like I understand what Red Bull is trying to do. And everyone's making it Max is the priority because they let him through later on and everything and yada yada yada. But Max was gaining even more rapidly than Checo had been gaining on him earlier in the race. Max is coming up fast because he's on the soft tires where, fresh soft tires and everything. Like, he was making up over a second a lap on everyone at that point in the race. And so, I think in that scenario, Red Bull should have let Max through because he was easily the faster car. But I also thought that Checo should have been let through earlier in the race and given the opportunity to make a chance to pass George when Max was struggling with his DRS and stuck just behind George for lap after lap.
Yeah, I think based on that, I might agree with you. It does seem like maybe just a bit of stubbornness then to not want to reverse the cars. But yeah, it's hard to say. There, maybe the thing is knowing what Red Bull would be selecting for. Like, if they really want all of those points, like they don't just care about getting max points. I should say they don't care about getting the most possible points on a weekend, but they also care about getting the most possible points on to Max specifically because he has been, he has the 2 races early that he DNF'd.
Well, yeah, and I think you're on to kind of say this is why I was asking you because I wanted to see your opinion, but we are of a pretty similar opinion that it's like Red Bull was looking at multiple things and reasoning with it going into it. Like a lot of people I saw online were turning it into Red Bull just wants to do everything for Max and Checo's just the number 2 driver so he doesn't get his blah 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 blah. Like they didn't want to let him go for the race win and all, and to some extent, yeah. Like, they are trying to... Max, by finishing in first, what ended up... If he had finished second in the race, I think he would have been 1 point behind Leclerc in the standings.
And now he's the leader.
Now he's the leader by 6. Also, by implementing team orders, you're causing your cars not to fight each other and potentially crash and end up... Because my other side of it... They're looking at the constructors' standings. Because of this race, they jumped up and they're now 26 points ahead in the constructors' standings. So by avoiding any potential clash of their own cars that's going to wipe 2 of them out and end up with no points for anyone, that I understand team orders. And I also do think Max was the faster car. So to avoid them having potential contact at that point, it's just like... Max ended up on the better strategy because the heat was fucking up the tires, and it just kind of is what it is. But I saw a lot of grief on social media about kind of Checo and how he isn't getting a fair shake.
Man, fair's a really tough word to throw around. I don't know about that.
Yeah, it
I don't know
was
anything about fair.
a lot of, well, no, and I mean I agree. There are priorities and everything. I think even if they had let Checo through earlier, I think Max probably still would have ended up catching up to him before
But
the end of
may
the
have had
race.
to race Sergio later.
Right, exactly. And
Or
so,
compromise Sergio's P2, where what if, if I'm just thinking of like a random scenario. What if they're pretty close and Sergio slowing down or Max slowing down gives Russell the edge and like gets by as well? There's any number of things that can go wrong in a scenario like that. Even what was the race where they flipped around the McLaren cars? Even like we even knew they were trying to flip those cars around for at least a lap and a half. But
yeah,
there's the quest of okay, but where do you slow a car down to let the other guy go? Because
right.
you're giving up pace.
Yeah.
So there is an actual strategic disadvantage to taking your foot off the gas and or having to touch the brake.
Yeah, it's not
So
like they were in no man's land and they're like Checo's 10, 15 seconds back from George and
yeah, they're like in a tax
like they're
scenario.
yeah, so I think that's another good point of it too. I think a lot of people who are just I think the problem or the reason that people were griping with it is people are just fans of good racing and they
Of
just
course.
wanted to see these two guys who are both talented drivers like kind of go after it and see who comes out on top and
Yeah.
everyone's like it's so early in the season like if something happens it happens and it's like teams like Red Bull don't look at it that way. Christian Horner is like about winning.
Right.
He doesn't he's seen what happens when his drivers go after like fight each other on the track. He's seen Ricardo and Max take each other out of a race and have two pissed off drivers throwing their gloves at the ground and like
Yeah.
storming off the track and everything. Like we've seen it with Mercedes too. We've seen Nico and Lewis come together and take each other out. This is not the Ferraris have done it a number of times. This is not an
Right.
uncommon scenario. And with how tight the championship is at current state, I think that was just an intelligent team decision to say let's maximize points. Max is on the better strategy because that's just how it ended up. And hey, it is what it is.
Right. Yeah, fans are selecting for fun. The teams are selecting for race wins.
Yeah, and even like Will Buxton said something about it too, and like he just loves good racing. I think he wanted
Sure.
to see what would happen if the team was like, "Hey, we're not gonna say anything. Do what you're gonna
Right.
do." That is exciting. It's interesting, but it can also be devastating to a team's weekend.
Right. Yeah, and I don't see the like I I don't know, man. I would rather see a team make the boring like arguable decision to just safely finish out a race, prioritizing their number one driver that needs points to get back up into a championship defending position. I would so much rather look at that team that understands like the strong strategic decisions that have to be made to get to a winning position fucking 16 races from now.
Yep.
I don't care about seeing what a 3-turn battle between Sergio and Max looks like. I just don't care. I would rather see them both hoisting a trophy at 1-2 or 2-3 or 1-3 or whatever the fuck it looks like.
Yeah.
So the storyline fan, the like, oh, but you should have, because he's probably no, he's not. He's not. They're not thinking about that.
Yeah.
The only that's just the headcanon that you have going on.
Yeah, well, and Checo was definitely upset. He did voice over the radio that he felt it was unfair, but drivers are in the cars in the middle of it. It's the competitive nature.
Sure.
I know after the race they brought Checo and Max into their debrief after the race. They were like, Checo, like Max was gaining 1.2 seconds on you per lap with 46 laps left in the race, and he was only 10 seconds back from you. Like, he was gaining on you rapidly. You wouldn't have been able to defend no matter what. Mm-hmm. And in the case of Checo not being let through, probably something like that. If we drop Max back, then you're giving George more of a lead. You're not giving, like, you might not have the opportunity to get past him because he's now gained this free air to, like, further out and is driving in clean air with Leclerc so far. Like, I think that it will get worked out. But I just thought, like, I mean, we saw it with McLaren at Monza last year. They had a 1-2, and Lando was behind Ricardo, and he was like, hey, like, I'm going faster. Like, can I go through? And they were like, man, hold position. We're going for the best team result. And I think that's what you have to make the decision on sometimes is just, hey, you got to take the best team result. It is what it is.
I 100% agree. And I think any other like argument or storyline is just like headcanon, like I said.
Yeah. So, well, and speaking of people not getting much TV time and the TV production, what were your thoughts on the drone camera?
Oh, I mean, I think it actually startled Sarah a little bit, but it just seemed like the natural evolution of the fucking thing that they have on the wire that can, like, go really fast down the straights.
Yeah.
Like, pardon me, but who gives a fuck? Dude, it is literally the... Okay. I do not understand the attitude of, like, wanting to bite at the hand that feeds you. You are actively making a living off of the thing, right? And your only concern is trying to find that thing that you can just shit on about the weekend.
Yeah.
Like, it is so boring to me, honestly, where fans want to shit on the thing that is bringing the sport to them, just trying to up the production value, try a new thing.
Yeah.
Ultimately, they may just be trying it out, seeing if it works.
Yeah.
So the whole, like, the outrage about it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like,
yeah,
I could take it or leave it.
Right.
But
like,
overall, I want more of it because it made people so fucking angry.
That's a funny side of it. I personally, when it was used, I was just like, oh, this is kind of cool, but, like, they need to get better at it. I'm like, they're either not at the right part of the track for a good angle, or they're, like, a little too far back, and you're just seeing all this stuff on the side and all. And I was like, or it was a little shaky because of the wind, and I'm like, like, it's but I don't.
Yeah, it's just a flying camera. Like,
yeah,
why are you?
I was like, it's cool to give it a shot. Also, we got to see. In the pit lane, we got to see Mr. Pit Crew camera do the little 360. Did that catch Sarah off too?
No, she wasn't even in the room for that. But I was.
That was sick. I love when they do that so much. It's so cool. So I agree with you. I thought the drone footage was a cool addition. I just think that they need a little bit more practice and they have to nail it down a little bit, but they're not going to without working on it. Like,
right.
So,
and they're just trying to incorporate new available technology into a broadcast that has hungrier and hungrier fans and an ever growing fan base. Like, they're just trying to try new shit out. Like, oh my God, people just want to yell.
Yeah, that's fair. So I'm glad to hear that, because that's a funny perspective. I was like, it's fine. Like,
Yeah, it's
I
just
was like,
fine.
if they didn't have it, like, I wouldn't care. But like, and they did have it, and I was like, that's kind of cool. Like,
Yeah,
you
100%
you
not
go,
bad.
give it a shot. But I think that kind of covers my general notes from the Grand Prix. Did you have any other stuff that you wanted to hit on before we talk about Monaco a little bit?
I just love hearing Max's onboard radios when he's getting fired up. Like, I know that feeling so well of the shut the fuck up, mate. I clearly am aware I did not go any faster. Like,
Uh,
that killed me. Honestly, I was like, man, I feel you so hard. I
Well, and
feel you,
they're
brother.
like Max, we think you closed the DRS on that last one. He's like, I'm hitting the button 50
Yeah,
fucking
you
times
know he's just
because
fucking mashing it.
it hasn't opened for the last 10 laps,
I
motherfucker.
know. I know.
like no shit. I hit it a bunch of times. Like, that's
I was
so
literally
funny.
just waiting for his helmet to just like explode off the top of his head and just like a little nuclear cloud.
It's
Oh my
just
god, it's
so
so funny.
It's so funny, and it's so funny to see how different it is. Like when he's like at the end of the race on a win like that, where he's like, like earlier in the race, he's like, "Motherfuckers, this is the easiest fucking part of the car. Get it right." And then at
Yeah.
the end of the race, was like, "Oh, that wasn't the way we planned it, but like, good race, everyone." It's like,
Yeah, well, can you imagine the relief? Like, Jesus almighty. It must be hell in those cars. It must be hell.
also on a day like that when it's that hot out,
Yeah.
like that is
Yeah.
like probably super easy to get frustrated when you're like, I'm fucking just I am in an oven in this
Yeah.
car right now. Like,
Yeah.
got hot brakes around me, hot asphalt under me, hot sun beating down with no shade. I'm wearing a fireproof suit and a like team uniform and a helmet and gloves. You're probably like in there like just
You are
absolutely
cooking.
baking like a Christmas ham. Like, oh god.
Brutal. Brutal, brutal, brutal. So yeah, I understand that it's not good for the broadcast, and there are young ears listening.
They
But
bleep
as a,
stuff.
oh yeah, they bleep it, and as a grown adult, oh man, it's just funny. But yeah, that's all I really had to say about the Grand Prix.
Cool. Well, just going into Monaco, we just as a refresher from last year of kind of what happened. Leclerc put it on pole, then bins it in his last quali lap that stopped Max and anyone else from going for that P1.
Controversy.
Which then Ferrari said, "No, Charles, your car is fine. We fixed it. It's all good." And then he did not make it to the grid for the actual race. They didn't change the power unit. Car wouldn't go vroom. So Leclerc has had his number of issues at Monaco during his career. He has not really been able to have a successful race there as a Monegasque. So leading into this week with Monaco, we've got his opportunity to kind of make that back, especially with one of the fastest cars on the grid. Of course, last year Max did end up inheriting that pole position after Leclerc was out. Ended up sticking it from starting in first place, getting the race win and everything. So I think obviously, as we've said before on the podcast, Monaco is all about the qualifying. Not all about, but primarily about the qualifying for getting that position, since it is so difficult to pass. But I think that we've got some intrigue with this a bit on that side, with Leclerc having some really good qualifying performances and having an extremely competitive car compared to last year when he still was able to put it on pole.
How many times do you think we're gonna hear the word Monegasque this fucking weekend?
Oh, so many. I had to be the first.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I had to
starting
throw
off
it out
strong.
there.
I've already said it one time. The Monegasque driver Charles Leclerc.
Yeah.
He's from Monaco.
Yep.
Yep.
So home race, driving on the streets. He grew up. Grew
He
up
used to go to
walking on.
school.
Yeah.
He used to go to school there. That's what he said.
So it should be a fun race. I did want to just ask your opinion.
Ooh.
I'm curious. Like, I see so much like F1 media on Twitter and all, and I know that
Okay.
you use Twitter a little bit, but you're not like that's what I get my news from. That's like what I scroll through more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always, year after year, I see these conversations brought up about, oh, does Monaco fit in today's racing? Oh, the cars are too fast for it. Oh, this, oh, that. Oh, it's boring. Oh, you can't pass. What are your thoughts on Monaco as a race? Like, just factually, one of the most difficult tracks to pass on the calendar, one of the least profitable tracks for F1 in terms of the entry fee that the city pays to have a race there and everything, compared to Abu Dhabi, Texas, like all these other countries, states, areas. Where do you think this fits in terms of F1, and do you think that we're outgrowing Monaco?
I can't really say. I don't know if I have much of an opinion. I feel like I haven't been here that long to like understand it in like understand it as a piece of the calendar and how it fits in the whole show of it.
Gotcha.
But to give just a layman's opinion, someone that's seen a couple of the races, we saw fucking Iron Man race there that one time. That was crazy.
Wild.
So, okay, but I will tell you what I was thinking about when you were posing the question. Knowing what we know about Formula One, that ultimately it is just a large show, right? It's a
It's entertainment.
it's entertainment. It's for like ad revenue. It's for movers and shakers to have meetings. It's for connections. It's for international clout. It's for a whole number of things. But one of the big things, like you said, is entertainment. And there is something to be said about putting famous people, fast cars, big yachts on a beautiful fucking like bay,
Like Miami.
cityscape. Yeah. So maybe from a competitive race perspective, maybe it is a little outdated, but my counter to that would be, is it not fun to have a track where the qualifying is the thing that you want to see? Like there are the tracks like there are tracks like Suzuka that are just notorious for like, oh, Suzuka in the wet. That is a whole different skill set that you have to develop as a driver that you do not get to develop unless you do the thing.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for having a track where the qualifying is so punishing and the race is so inaccessible from a racing standpoint. You can't actually do the thing that you've signed up to do. You cannot race there. You can only drive in a single file line as close to the other guy as you can. So, from a competitive diversity standpoint, I love Monaco. I love that there's a race that is totally gated at Saturday, where if you do have this performance where you get a pass on that long straight that runs up the hill before you get into the technical section, if you can get an overtake there, well, you're probably remembered for the rest of the weekend now. Like, people are going to be talking about you, oh, the pass at whatever. I think on a calendar that is very long, you need tracks that are able to set themselves apart and have something that is a sticking point, the thing that people come to see.
Yeah, I like that description and like kind of opinion on it. It's a little different from mine. My opinion was, I think, a little less comprehensive than like what you were thinking through there and like going through, because I agree with you a lot that it is at the core of it. It's entertainment, and it is also something different. It does have its uniqueness, but it also has its pull. It's Monaco. It's a historical famous. It is the most famous race in Formula One. Monaco is the place. If you think of, if you ask anyone, like, most famous track in Formula One, Monaco. That's the answer. And like, just because it doesn't have the most competitive racing, in my opinion, doesn't mean that it shouldn't be a part of it, because it, like, the history of F1 is also part of F1. It's how we've gotten there. It's how we have these interesting storylines. Like, yeah, there are tons of tracks out there that are competitive and racy, and you get to see a lot of exciting passes and overtakes and intrigue and excitement and all. Like, this is not that, but it has all of its own values from that aspect. It has the entertainment value. It has this just imminence of how huge of a place it is. Like, winning in Monaco is on drivers' bucket lists. Like, when Ricardo lost and then lost at Monaco after leading, and then was able, I believe it was 2016, to win the Monaco Grand Prix and did his belly flop into the pool. Like, that is probably one of the greatest moments of his career if he looks back at it and thinks about his, like, highest points and most exciting things. Like, that's probably it. Just like one of his lowest is probably when he didn't finish at Monaco and lost out on that race. Like, those are, like, this is a part of F1, and I don't think that just because it's hard to pass during the race means that it should be removed. I think that it has its place in F1 as a whole. I think it's important to have some of that history there, along with the new and the exciting and the racy and all of that. Those things that on a 22-23 race schedule, you get plenty of throughout the year.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good point. And yeah, I didn't even touch on like the historic aspect of it either. Now, maybe there is a time where I don't think a track should be on the calendar just for the sake of it having been on the calendar, like for just historic reasons. But there is still a lot going for the Monaco Grand Prix before you put it into like outdated territory.
Yeah.
The one thing I kind of want to liken it to is it makes me think about the like perceived differences between like the LPL region and LCK, where, you know, people would say like, oh, LCK is so boring, like it's just macro play, like they don't ever kill each other, you know, it's all just like turret pushes and whatever. So but it's not any less of a game of League of Legends. It's just a different game of League of Legends.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if people are selecting for, I've said this word a million times, if people are selecting for just like the most fucking exciting Formula One race they've ever fucking seen, yeah, Monaco's just not it. But I think there is many goals to be had when looking at a track, and I still think Monaco's great. I think it's still pretty fun.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I think that's the main points I wanted to hit on in regard to this upcoming week. We've got another race, back-to-back race weekends. So check out the Monaco Grand Prix this weekend. I think it'll be fun. But getting into LPL and LCK and League of Legends, we had the Rumble Stage that went on throughout this past week. From last Friday all the way until Tuesday. A lot of I think unexpected kind of things happening throughout this. G2 continuing their hot streak and then slumping extremely hard at the end of the Rumble stage. We saw T1 and RNG split games. We saw RNG and T1 lose to minor regions, kind of to some extent. I guess RNG.
Well, EG took a game off of T1.
Yeah, and so RNG only lost to T1, but in general, like a pretty, no, RNG lost to G2 and to T1. So RNG losing 2 games during the group or the Rumble stage there. So,
well, I didn't expect anybody to go undefeated. But what I do want to start this conversation off with is a conversation about evil geniuses, actually, where if you go back to the early episodes of the podcast about what would it have been, the spring season, I was very low on evil geniuses. I did not believe the hype. I did not think the wins that they were getting were like evident enough of like really clean play, like the type of play that you're like, oh yeah, they've got this. I was really not convinced of EG, but the one thing that keeps on happening with this team as we've moved through the spring season, we've seen it, we've talked about it, but now we get to this point where they are actively winning team fights against some of the best players in the world. They might be, like, pound for pound, evil geniuses might be, hot take, team fighting better than any team that was at the tournament. They punched up so hard in this Rumble stage that I literally have like questioned all of my analysis from this whole year. I'm like, where the fuck did this team come from? But it's so obvious, like, when you look at the lineup. Now, I know Danny, he has not had like the best couple of games recently.
Yep.
But they really punch up in a way that is fun to watch.
Yeah, and I think just talking about EG in general as well, I don't know if I would say that they are team fighting the best out of everyone in the tournament. I think
pound
that
for pound.
I think that they are up there towards the top for sure. As the stage has been going on, but I completely agree. I think that the expectations that I had and that a lot of people had was, I did hope that they made it out of groups. I mean, they into the Rumble stage and all, but I didn't have high expectations for them in this Rumble stage. And just something that I saw that Mark Z put out on Twitter. So back in the lock-in tournament in NA, JoJo was jokingly trash-talking Bjergsen because he beat him once during the lock-in tournament, and fans were like, yo, like, shut up until you've done something kind of thing. And now in his first split, he's made it to MSI. He's made it out into the Rumble stage. He's made it out of groups, quote unquote.
Right.
He is on one of the top 5 most successful, probably top 4 most successful North American teams ever at this point in international competition. And
just based on those results alone.
Based on those results alone.
Right.
We've only had one team make it to the semifinals in Worlds. We have only had, I think, maybe 5 teams make it out of 5 different organizations make it out of groups in international tournaments between MSI and Worlds. This is only the second time, I believe, that a North American team has made it out of the groups to the best of stage at
Yeah.
MSI, with the only other one being CLG back in like 2015, 2014, something like that.
Right.
Like we are,
And those results are like legacy results at this point.
they're easily, I would say, one of the top 5 performances at an international Riot tournament ever.
Well,
And
yeah, I mean, but that's not hard. Like North America has just never shown up. They've
no,
always their
but
name was always on the list.
that makes it even more impressive, is like
Right.
they are doing this, and they are also doing it as a team that people did not expect to perform like this. I mean, Danny is only been around for a couple seasons at this point. Like we're seeing Impact just completely be a boss on Gangplank and just fucking people up after having, like, being one of the oldest players in the tournament by far, beating Faker after however many years since they've played together. What is it, like 8 years since they
Yep.
won that world championship? Maybe
Crazy.
9 since they won. That was season 3. This is season, what, 11? So
Yeah.
like 8, 9 years later, Impact is putting people on his back and just having a day. JoJo, a rookie. I mean, I've been so impressed by this team, and so I'm glad that you brought that up, because they have put out just consistently good performances. They've had their faltering, they've had their missteps and everything, but they have just continued to grow throughout this tournament. And now seeing that they're going to be in the best of 5 semifinals against RNG, I don't. Yeah, they're the underdog. I don't
Big time.
necessarily expect. I don't expect them to win that series. Could they take a game or two off of them? I think so. I think that they have a shot to take a game or two. And
Me too.
I'm gonna be pulling for them, because man, they've got some excitement in that team. They've been fun to watch.
Yeah, big time. Like, and that's the thing, is they play in a way that is like surprising and aggressive. And I guess this is what I meant by they were like they're punching up really well, is like they just are winning some fights that it just looks like they shouldn't when they start out, right? And they
Yeah.
just, like the casters love to say, they just like outhands the opponent, and it's like really, really exciting to watch, because North America hasn't had that like wow factor in so long. Like we're just expecting to see them go fucking '06, the meme dream, right? Like
Yeah. And I mean, this is the style, or the general like concept that the good Cloud9 and bad Cloud9 international tournament teams have had, is they're
right.
like, we're going to fight it at anything and everything. And some of the teams have just been better at doing that than others on the Cloud9 historical side,
Right.
where, hey, if they're fighting everything and just losing every fight, yeah, they're going to go and whatever. But if they're able to do what EG is doing now and get some of those wins and then continue to push those advantages, that is the biggest key, is they're getting these leads, they're trading objectives, they're putting themselves in a good spot, winning team fights, and then they're not just like stagnating. They're continuing to push. You see T1 going, when they beat T1, you see T1 going for a Baron, and like EG hard contesting that, using all of their utility, Nocturne ulting so that T1 can't know where this engage is coming from, getting the Gangplank in there and just getting some extremely huge damage on multiple people with the barrels. Like, you're seeing them really play a coordinated game. And yeah, like you said, punching up, beating teams with overall better talent, because they are utilizing all of their abilities, all of their like play styles, all of their opportunities kind of to the fullest. Like, they are they're playing close to their well, I don't want to say that, but they are playing what I imagine would be close to as well as they are going to play with the current like skill levels and stuff. And like there's always room for those players to grow and everything, but them playing at their best gets wins when the other team is better but doesn't quite play at their best.
In that game specifically, it was T1's game to lose, and there is no way they expected like you said, the hard commit defense, because that was all in all not a good call from T1, but I think lesser teams would have let them get away with it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's so surprising about EG is like they kind of called them on their bluff and it got them the game.
Yeah. And they had to do it twice. They had to fight T1 on Baron 2 times in that game.
Right. But that first one, I mean, that's momentum.
Big time.
And then like moving forward, like they're gonna know, and I think they said this on the cast, so forgive me for just like taking his point, but like there's serious value in knowing that you can make a thing bleed, that it's just like you, right? Where like before it's this infallible machine that game after game after game they just fucking level 1 you, they kill you, they 2v2
That's
you.
comforting.
It's super comforting to know that like, oh, okay, we can beat these guys. So I think like moving into the next stage of the tournament, specifically from EG's perspective, I think that single game win against T1 is fucking massive.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so looking just at this this best of stage, I think we're going to have some really fun series. I think like seeing how EG shakes out against a really good RNG team will be fun, but also T1 against G2. I think that G2 has performed really well. They did seem to kind of lose their mojo a little bit for for a little stretch there, but overall I think that they if they can kind of get themselves together mentally and prepare for the series, that they can put in a really exciting performance against T1 in this matchup.
Yeah, and that one, honestly, that one's kind of tough to call. I'm not sure. I think from what we've seen from G2, I think their level could rise to the occasion, and I actually think they could beat T1 in the 5-game set. EG versus RNG, I'm not so sure. I think that's probably going RNG's way, but it should be a good fight at least.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they'll be fun series to watch, but overall, I would say my logical mind, I'm leaning for a 3-1 in both series from T1 and RNG. Sure. I think that G2 does have more of a shot of coming out and winning that series against T1, but I do expect T1 and Faker to really lock it in and put in a good performance there, maybe drop one game. But I think that my biggest key with how T1 have been playing is just Zeus's performances. Zeus has been just incredible in so many games throughout this tournament so far. He's put in performances on so many different champions as well. I mean, he's played the Aurelia. We've seen him on like the Gwen. We've seen him on the Gangplank. We've seen him on just so many different champions throughout this series, and I think that he is going to continue to perform very well because he has impressed me immensely. Like, Faker's done everything that I expect Faker to. Like, it's still exciting seeing him on the Ahri, dashing in, hitting charms, getting those max range Q hits and everything. Like, but it's a fun thing to watch, but you do expect it to some extent. Zayas is a little less of a known quantity. Like, you don't know how high his potential goes, and so seeing him play and make some big plays, outplaying 2v1s and all these different things, I've been super impressed with him, and I think that overall T1 just has a bit of an advantage in that matchup.
Yeah, big time. And if you look like lane to lane, I think a lot of those matchups match up pretty well. And depending on the champions, it could go either way. But yeah, I think that really is the matchup to highlight is Broken Blade versus Zeus. It seems like Zeus is really just in another category right now. And depending on what G2 see from their VODs, from their practice, from their scrim times, we may likely see a very top lane focused strategy from G2 to try and get Broken Blade ahead, try and get Yankos up into his lane. Because as of right now, the owner Zeus combo, it's pretty fucking strong. And a lot of times, Zeus doesn't even need the owner backup. He is like breaking ankles in 2v1s with Gwen and the like.
Yeah. So I think that overall, I expect to see that be kind of the lane that tips into the favor of T1 and kind of tips the scales a little bit.
Yep.
Just like
No, I think
looking
that's
at,
good.
especially looking at the games that PSG beat G2, which they beat them both times in the Rumble stage here. Hanabi was putting in just really, really solid performances in those games. I mean, we saw Hanabi look really, really strong, and so that being the potential weak spot to some extent for G2 in terms of their players and where maybe the biggest skill difference is. I think that is the area that concerns me the most from G2. I mean, like Hanabi, his Kennen play against them was insane, and we've seen Zeus play so many different champions. I think that just leaves Broken Blade a little bit at a deficit. So
Yeah, big time. I would definitely agree with that. Now, hot take though, I think Ken play can only be as good as your support and your jungler are. Because if those wards aren't down, you're never gonna get the sick teleport.
Well, yeah, that, and also just like in terms of like Kennen is fully reliant on just like the rest of the team in general. Like, it's very rare that a Kennen's going to 100 to 0 someone with the ult. Like, he's getting in there and trying to lock as many people down as he can and not die. Like, his goal is not to one shot someone. It's to get in there and let the rest of his team do the damage that they need to. I mean, obviously Kennen does decent damage on his own, of course, but he is not 100 to 0ing people. Once he uses everything, like, that's it. Like, he is hung out to dry unless the rest of his team is hitting the champs that he is locked down. Like, that is just the way it goes.
Yeah, but definitely effective when used properly. So I think we'll be seeing more of that champion, especially, well, maybe for some of the top laners. We saw it in the EG G2 game, so quite possibly.
Yeah, we saw it in EGG2. We saw it in a couple other games. We saw Saigon Buffalo play it. We saw PSG play it. So it is possible that it will come out again, but I think for top lane AP carries, Gwen is kind of the predominant right now. But
yeah, seriously, she is a truck.
She is, and so much outplay potential as well. So really, I'm just excited for these best of series and everything. I do have to, of course, give just big props to PSG Talon and to Saigon Buffalo. They both were able to pick up some nice wins throughout this Rumble stage. They just weren't able to kind of completely pull it out to make it out and everything, which of course as an NA fan I am happy about, but I did enjoy watching them throughout this Rumble stage as well. Have some fun games. So
Yeah, definitely. And they put up better results, obviously, than maybe a lot of people called for. Those are always the teams that you expect to, drop a whole lot of games. But yeah, seeing them come up big against some of their opponents was obviously fun to see. You don't want to ever see them go home with zeros in front of their record. So yeah, it's good to see those teams get some wins, and obviously it just makes for fun games and a pretty good tournament overall so far.
yeah, absolutely. So we've got the RNG EG series tomorrow, Friday, starting at 4 a.m. I'll see you there. No, I'll be catching up on the games afterwards, but then we have T1 G2 Sunday, and then the finals T1 G2 Saturday, and then the finals on Sunday. So a lot more good League of Legends in our future.
Yeah, seriously. This is a packed weekend, and then I know there's also the Indy 500 on Sunday, so we're gonna have it's gonna be a jam-packed day on Sunday. So much
Oh
so
yeah.
much racing, so many games. It's gonna be a long one.
Definitely. So lots of fun to look forward to on this Memorial Day weekend. But I think that covers kind of everything I had for the MSI Rumble stage. Was there any other notes you had or no?
Now that hits it pretty well from my end as well.
Cool. So then we do have a couple of Magic games that you had this week, so we can dive into those a little bit. Anything exciting with these decks that you were able to play? I know you played a couple of different ones this past week.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on it a little bit. Just wanted to shout out Death Magic. He invited myself, Buddha, and Braxit on Sunday to I guess I would call it just like a higher power pod. Not necessarily CDH. So it was Urza versus Magda versus Rafine, and then I was on Najila. The Najila deck that I have, it's tuned for Commander 9. It doesn't have any proxies in it. So it's definitely tuned for slower pods. So what I ended up doing, I took out like 4 or 5 cards, slotted in proxies that I had of like Jeweled Lotus, a land, just a big old counter spell, and just some other things that like bring it up to kind of like the high power level. So the pod was pretty good. Like I said, it was Urza, Magda, Rafine, and then Najila. I was gonna play Burgi, which would have put us more in that CEDH territory. But we had already done the double red deck before, so we wanted to do something different. I brought a 5-color commander. So that was just really fun. Always happy to play in those games, and it's so intense playing those. And I was saying this to Buddha after the games, where like it's crazy being in those positions where like you can look at the game overall, you can look at the decisions made and say like, oh yeah, I lost the game right there on that decision. Where it's like I did this, but I should have done that, and then you look at how that ripples, and you're like, oh yeah, fuck. And it's even gonna be like players watching that video after he cuts it, they're gonna be like, oh, the Najila player sucks here. Like it's like glaring play mistakes that lead to just like you give another player the game. So it's fun playing in those more like not higher stakes, obviously, because nothing's
Oh,
on the line, but just much faster, tighter gameplay, I guess you could
well,
say.
yeah, because I
So
think
that's
it
fun.
it sounds like it just gives you less opportunity. Like if you do slip up, like you are just really, because of the level of cards, because of the quality of all of the decks and everything, you're ending up in a spot where if you slip up, like you are putting yourself much further behind potentially than you would be in the Commander 9 League, where you're not using proxies, where the decks are a little bit more casual
Right.
and everything. So
Yeah, but either way, fun games. I was able to get one victory, so that felt really good. Obviously,
nice.
because that's all I care about is the results. Anything else, I feel like a schmuck. But yeah, so that was really fun. I imagine that game will be up on YouTube. He said sometime at the end of May or beginning of June. So I'll be sharing that on the Twitters when it's up, and you can check those games out. But those were Sunday. On Monday, we played some games with the Commander 9. I brought a new deck that I'd brewed a little while ago, but had got some pieces in for recently that take it from being just like a weird red-blue, just like spell slinging deck into something that, like, it's trying to get to. Trying to get to a win. So it's Niv Mizzet Curiosity. Curiosity is an enchantment. It says whenever this creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. Niv Mizzet says whenever you draw a card, deal 1 damage to target opponent. So it just loops back and forth. And as long as you have enough cards in your library to ping all of the damage, everybody dies. And everything else in the deck, it's like pretty basic, pretty banal, whatever, but it can do that thing, and there's a couple of other combos in the deck. So it's like trying to win the game, which is fun. So I played that 2 games on Monday, got 1 win, which was super exciting, and lost the other one, but they took me out quick because I just won the game with a combo previously, so good on them. But yeah, just great week for Magic overall. Got a couple of games in. It was just fun times.
Nice. That's awesome. So definitely, I feel like those combos have to be just like so. I know we've talked about it before, but hitting that has to just feel so satisfying. You're just like, ha, and I draw a card, and you take a damage, and I draw a card, and you take a damage, and you're just like, oh, how many cards can I do this for?
And it is funny, like, because a lot of times in those scenarios, it's just, do we lose now? And it's like people checking, oh, can I do anything? Can I do anything about this?
And
no,
you're
you can't
just
do
counting how
this.
many cards are left in your library, and you're like, this is the damage. Is it larger than the amount of health life that you guys have?
And it was pretty close. There would have only been, if I counted properly, there only would have been 5 cards left in my library with the table dead. And interestingly enough, well, it doesn't really matter. It was just fun games, good win. And I think that's a deck that I could like reasonably take out and play like in a pick ban scenario and be like pretty comfortable with the result. So I ticked up on my little app. I have just like an organizing system
Ranking of the
how I
decks.
name things. Yeah, just so like when I pull it up, all of like the decks that I'm playing a lot and thinking about, they're right at the top, and then it goes down like in power level. So I shifted it up in power level a little bit, so that's always fun. But yeah, just fucking cardboard. I'm gonna talk about some vinyl.
All right.
Well, I wasn't listening to it on vinyl, obviously. But Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, we previewed it a little bit last week if you've been listening. Aaron, give me your thoughts. Just give me an overview. Get into it deep. Start out however you want to.
Cool. So I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and everything as well. But I did not get the album the first listen through. It didn't click for me. And so I kind of just casually listened through and all, and so I took some time and I listened through it.
And you were like, damn, pretty mid.
No, I wasn't. I was like, I'm missing something because this is not the way that I'm used to Kendrick making albums. Like, I'm so used to there being this like story, and there is. It's just I didn't catch it the first time, and so I'm so used to there being like this theme or the story that's like very obvious and all. And I thought that it was a little bit Less obvious if you just listen to the album once through. But again, after listening through a second time, then a third time, then a fourth time, after it clicked the second time, the album, I am just as impressed with this album as I have been with so many other Kendrick albums, that there is such a complete work that listening to them as a whole, like the songs in the album as a whole are greater than the sum of their parts. And so the first time listening through, I was like, this seems so, it seems so emotional. It seems so like personal, but I was like, I don't get it. So I hit it back to the top, and I started realizing that this is like a story of a lot and an explanation of things. And so you start out in the early part of the album. So the first song, it, in my opinion, United in Grief, is essentially like a what's the thing at the beginning of a book, like that you have all the
Prologue?
Chapters? No, that like lays
Table
out
of
all
contents?
yeah, you've got like the first song is almost like a table of contents. You've got him talking about, I've been going through something, 1,855 days I've been going through something. He's talking about what is a bitch in a miniskirt, talking about women and their hurt, talking about the president's evil thirst and the like craziness in the world, talking about, I went and got me a therapist, I can debate on my theories and sharing it, like going through. And so then you get later in that song and he's talking about all the things he bought, the new Mercedes, the black G-Wagon, 28 years young, this jewelry and all. And so this is like laying out what he's going to talk about throughout the album. In the start of it, the early songs, I see him explaining like where he was at emotionally, like during this struggle, this time, this 1,855 days that he has gone. I'm assuming that's the length between his last album and this release, but I didn't look into what that number signifies.
Yeah, that was just my guess
It
as
seems
well.
approximately that amount of time. But in N95, you're seeing him talk about all of this, like, who are you? Who are you when you take away the jewelry, you take away the clout, you take away the fame, you take away the clothes, the cars, the money? Like, who are you at the core? And you're looking at how he is like trying to think about that stuff and trying to kind of contemplate the things that he is using to cover his hurt, and then to cover this trauma that he gets into later in the album. Then you see later on with We Cry Together, which is a really, really emotional and difficult kind of song to get through. You're seeing this like this anger and this fighting and this like disgust with your partner, your like the person who's supposed to be on your team. And so you're seeing like early on at 95, some of those early songs you're seeing, and in like Rich, you're seeing him talk about the things that he kind of covered his pain with, or that he used to distract himself from that. Then you're seeing the negative effects of his trauma and his hurt and everything on his relationships and on his personal, like, close people and everything, and how these toxic, the acting toxically towards a relationship was another way of almost covering up this like lashing out from this pain that is like inside him. Then you kind of see it change a little bit. You start to see in songs like Savior, he's like talking about all these artists and how they made you think about something, but they are not your savior. They made you go through and contemplate maybe something that was wrong in your life, or something that they've went to that you're like, shit, I've been through that too, or like some feeling that they've had that you're like, man, I can relate to that because of this, and it makes you reflect on yourself a bit. And I think that is his like big kind of reflection on what he's been through, and kind of the start to confronting this trauma. And then we see him later on going and talking in Anti-Diaries about this situation where his aunt growing up his uncle became a trans man and went through this transition, and then how he as a young child was confronted by these adults who asked him, because they don't understand his aunt who became his uncle, they don't understand someone being trans, and they look at it in disgust, and they start saying, did he touch you, did your uncle touch you, did he do this horrible thing? And Kendrick's like, no, he never did. But they didn't believe him. And so like the weight of that at such a young age, and like going through things like this, his cousin doing the opposite, his cousin being born as a man and becoming a trans woman and everything, and the horrible slurs and things that were thrown at his family and everything through growing up, and some of the weight that he carried going into other trauma in Mother I Sober, talking about his mom and the abuse that she dealt with and everything, and how that negatively affected him. He really goes through this immense reflection throughout, looking at, whoa, this is what I did to block out the pain. This is the stuff that I did because I was in pain. Mm-hmm. Oh, this is me realizing I'm listening to other things. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm seeing why I'm acting this way. I'm seeing what's causing me to hurt, and that's why, that's the source of this anger, this lashing out, this distraction, this want to cover things up, make myself look like a G and like a badass by buying the coolest thing, like flexing my money and all, and then going, okay, wow, this is what's causing that. Okay, let me talk about this. Let me have my therapy session. Let me voice and put out in the world this thing or these things that caused me this pain. And then at the end of it, in mirror, looking at it and talking about how the pressure's taken over me. It's beginning to loom. Lately, I redirected my point of view, like looking and going, wow, I'm looking at myself as a person, as a whole, as a sum of all of my experiences, the trauma, the just blocking it out, the toxicness that I exuded because of these things, and like really coming to a point of growth. Him saying, I choose me, I'm sorry, and making the decision to better himself. It took me time to get to this point with the album. Like I said, I didn't understand the cohesion going through it the first time. But when I listened back through, I was like, this is unreal. I had so many thoughts flowing through my mind as I was listening to it the next couple times. And I'm like, there are songs that I really enjoy individually as well that are just like bangers in my like for me.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like listening to this album as a whole, like it's gonna be tough to listen to any songs from this album separately because I really really enjoyed this piece that he put out, and I think it fits so much with Kendrick and what we expect from him and what he has put out there. And so after the long wait, I am very very happy with this project. So I know I just talked your ear off, but
Well, I mean, it's well said, and obviously you were, trying to give your thoughts on the thing as a whole. So yeah, I don't blame you. I didn't want to interrupt. But yeah, well said. I agree with a lot of that. Where I think there was some, light bulb for me was, I'll kind of pick up right where you finished on the last track in Mirrors, where he says, you, you wanted me to save the world. I was too busy building mine. And I even think about our conversations during, a couple months into lockdown. There were like civil tensions in the air. And I remember even us talking about it. We were like, man, I wonder where Kendrick's at right now. Like, I'm interested to hear what he would have to say. And even we did it where, like, we did the thing that he is actively like raging against, where he's like, I'm not the guy, dude. Like, I'm not the guy that's here. I'm not the guy that's going to set all of this right.
yeah,
So I think that's really powerful. I think for him, it's super powerful and cathartic to be able to say um, like I appreciate the praise. I understand the position. I understand, but like I've got to worry about the thing and the pain that I've got going on here because it could do some real damage to those around me. I think that's like a beautiful thing, and it is an album that I think humanizes him in a way that makes me like actively want to cry because
mm-hmm.
it feels like somebody has shown you. It's like hearing the conversation between your parents that you weren't supposed to, but it can inform so much. It feels like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And like you were saying, just from like a project perspective, the way he does frame it as like therapy sessions on track 10, I think it's Count Me Out, where it opens up where it's session 10 breakthrough, and then it goes into, disc 2 of the record. Also, another key point, his first two disc project where thematically um, there's things that mirror each other
mm-hmm.
on 1 and 2. So obviously he used the medium to its fullest. Like you said, yeah, I think it's just a really really complete project. Musically, sonically, like it's super fun.
Mm.
The jazz, the piano is amazing.
Well,
The
the tap dancing interludes and everything, and how they were utilized in a
Yeah,
number of songs
yeah,
differently,
that's fascinating to me.
so cool.
Yeah.
And just to make another note on what you said about it being like a much more personal seeming project, I thought that was, and like it being kind of what we expect from Kendrick, I did get that feeling as well because we've seen him talk about his life before, but this is like the deep stuff. Like we've seen him talk about like, so in like Damn, it's not really as much about him, it's more about his family. In To Pimp a Butterfly, it's a lot more about like the state and the community.
Mhm.
In Section 80, it's about the block he grew up on and the people on that block. Like
Like
Good
his
Kid,
friends and like the
yeah,
stories and stuff.
yeah, and the stories and like what he was hearing as like from the old heads as a young age and everything. And then like Good Kid, Mad City, I think is the closest that you can really compare to it in terms of the like personalness to it, because those stories are really about him and himself and his experience, but it's more as a group. This really digs into Kendrick and like how he sees himself over time and through these experiences and through this like this age from being 28 when he's talking about buying all these expensive things and like really like making it and everything, and then going like we hear him say those things in other albums. In Damn, we hear him talking about hitting a cartwheel in his estate and how he's made it now and all. But this is like really reflecting internally at like, oh, like why am I the way that I am? And so like it really is a lot more like personal and individual, but still thematically and as a project, like just it's so impressive that he's continued to find new aspects of things that are personal to him to like write about, and to see how he's kind of like inspired differently. Like I don't know if this is like, I think it's really like a lot of talent to not just continue to do things the same way. I think it's easy as an artist to like, if you figure out something that works for you, to just do everything that way, and like whether it's like a different topic or a different whatever scenario or whatever, you're still writing it the same way. And he comes at everything from almost a different angle, I feel like, each time. And so super impressed with the continual like growth and like changing of the way he does things, because that's not easy.
Yeah, definitely not easy at all, and especially like just within hip hop specifically. I think of this line all the time. Jay-Z, he says, "People want to hear my old shit, buy my old albums." Like that, it is so succinct, but it is like mind-numbingly hilarious to me actually, because that is exactly the thing that your fans don't want you to do, is like grow and learn and get better and incorporate new things. They're just like, oh, we just want to hear, TPAB iterated on 4 or 5 times. So you're right. I think there is a strength in knowing that, like, oh, there's a pretty high chance that some percentage of my like core base does not fuck with this thing at all, but it's how I feel. It's what I want to do. And there was I would not be able to do it better, so I won't. There was a very heartfelt message from Anthony Fantano to Kendrick on the review that he did of the album. Obviously, he's going to review it,
and I haven't watched it yet, so I'm looking forward to it. But no, like, spoil what he says. I continue. I'm just excited
it's just a very heartfelt message, like from a fan. He's like, I never had these expectations for you that you've put on yourself. So he just said like, thank you just for like making good music. And that's where I'm at. Like, I feel bad that, oh my, so bad. Like,
hold on.
Where's music?
There he is. Oh, sorry. We're good, I think. Can you?
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
cool.
when I'm switching that, are you not able to hear me?
So voice lags and then goes super fast, and then like it's very like jittery. So I like,
that's funny.
I kind of get it, but then like even when your picture comes back up, there's like I see your voice moving but no words. for a second.
Oh,
It like
okay.
it's almost like taking a second to catch up to. So that's all.
That makes sense because I
So
just keep talking as though that's gonna like band-aid the scenario, but apparently that doesn't help.
yeah, it's all good. It just takes a
Okay,
second to catch up and everything. So, but
sure.
yeah, no, I will have to watch that video because I didn't want to watch Fantano's like review of it
Before you
until
had your own opinions of the thing.
exactly because like
Yeah.
he does like really dig into it and everything. I think I saw when he dropped his video. It's like 27 minutes long or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, and I'm not.
Oh, very thoughtful. Yeah.
And I'm like, I know he's gonna have so many thoughts. I that is like I wanted to form my own opinion first, and then kind of go into it with my own thoughts and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But yeah, I think just to sum it up, great album. I think in his discography, just another home run. I think it's great. I've had it on a bunch.
yeah,
But yeah, I do feel that way where with a great project, I don't like to listen to the songs like just as singles. It loses its something.
there's some that like I can definitely see myself having on like other playlists that are by themselves just because I enjoy it. Like N95, I really do enjoy that song. It like has a great tempo. It's got like this very fast paced like fun like interesting sound and like dialogue and just like bars throughout it. So like something like that I kind of think of similar to like having Humble or DNA from Damn
Sure.
on like a playlist where it's like it's got this fast paced upbeat like really like good like I could run and listen to that or I could work out and have that on a playlist, but
Right.
it does like add something being in the context of the album. So it's like there are some that I can see outside of it, but there are few of those tracks. So
Yeah, big time. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers from Kendrick Lamar. We enjoyed it. That's the official tall and short opinion of it. Did you enjoy the album? Let us know in the comments.
yeah.
That was the flavor of the week. We switched it up a little bit because it is a pretty landmark thing that we've been looking forward to. We wanted to take some time out and really give it the time it deserved. So, Aaron, I ask you, is there anything else you would like to add here for the evening?
No, I think that that covers it. I'm really glad we got to dig into that a bit. Also, as well with the race and MSI Rumble Stage and everything. So, of course, thank you all for joining us. We love being able to talk with you guys. We love hearing your opinions. So, like Justin said, leave a comment. Let us know what you thought of the album. Let us know what you thought and what your expectations are for the Rumble Stage or for the best of stage of MSI, the semifinals and finals. Thank you all for joining us. And that is all I've got.
Just want to say, join us next Thursday. New episodes come out every single Thursday, so look forward to that. We have a lot going on this weekend, so we'll have another jam-packed episode for you next week. Just like Aaron said, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for spending your time with us. This has been another Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out, everyone.
Later.